Dialysis? Man, blimey, I don't want to do dialysis. You know, down here where we live, we don't have no type or want to do no type of dialysis. Yeah, man, the dialysis it kill you, man. Nobody want to hardly do the dialysis. But I know one thing. This is the Lisa Baxter Show, giving you the 411 in a kidney world. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? I am so glad that you tuned in to the Lisa Baxter Show because every week, when I say every week, we have a slamming guest, a fantabulous guest on the show that you can learn from, glean from, hear their story, hear their testimony, and what have you. And we got the resources that'll better your life. You hear me? So that's what's going on tonight. I got a wonderful guest tonight. Man, this lady is an inspirational speaker. She has her own radio show, TV show. She helps people here and there. She have her own illness and her own stuff going on, and God has still brought her through and bless her to bless you. So I had to bring her on here just to give you a little something about what she's dealing with. Her name is Andrea. Now she told me how to say it. I'm ashamed of myself because I don't think I'm gonna get it right. Kuczynski, and
You got
she is on. Welcome, Andrea. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa, so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be on your show tonight. How you
You
been doing?
go ahead. I am just honored to have you. Wow, I did your show, and I'm glad now you're doing mine, and you're just a beautiful person. And boy, we're going to talk tonight. We're going to let them have it. We're going to give it with all both blessings in the barrel. You know what I mean? So we're going to start out and everything, but I'm telling you, you are an inspirational speaker and what have you. So how let me see. I want you to start with your journey because a lot of times, we see you looking good here. We see that you carrying all the stuff that you're carrying and you're doing well, but they don't know your story. They don't know your journey. I want you to hit it and tell them right now about your journey.
Well, what started my journey? First of all, I wanted to thank Lisa for having me on as a guest tonight. And
Oh,
I was so honored when she come on my show. I have a show called The Voice of Hope. And what started that journey for The Voice of Hope is I suffer with a rare condition called Chiari malformation. And what that is that where it's where your brain herniates out of the back of your neck.
mm,
Well, that's not supposed to happen. You know, they say you got too much brain to contain. That was me.
wow.
And it was herniating out the back of my neck, and it was causing paralysis. I was paralyzed at one time.
Mm,
It was causing visual issues, hearing issues, um, eating issues, all kind of issues. And I suffered with it for most of my life, and I didn't know what I had really. And I didn't find out until 14 years ago.
yes.
And when I finally found out what it was truly a blessing that I found a doctor who knew what this was because there's really only 10 true specialists in the world. And the doctor that I went to was not a true specialist that had seen this condition, but I happened to be blessed to find this doctor, and he had had some cases where he had seen this condition.
Mm,
And that's how I was diagnosed because I learned to be my own advocate and I
yeah.
carried my medical records around everywhere.
One.
So what happened is when I went into this doctor, I had prayed, me and Jesus, we had our own thing worked out here. I had, my idea was I was going to find out what was wrong with me. And I said, Lord, once I find out, that's all I need to know is what I have. And then I'm going to be miraculously healed. Well, I found out what was wrong with me, and the doctor proceeded to tell me that there was going to have to be there was something that could alleviate some of the problems, and that
Mm.
was brain surgery. And
Wow.
where they had to cut a hole in the back of my skull to relieve some of the pressure that my skull was pressing in on my brain and not given enough room. My brain was not given enough room for the spinal fluid to flow up around your brain.
Mm.
So at this point, I was sleeping sitting up for almost a year. Couldn't
Wow.
drive. I couldn't really take care of myself much. I couldn't do a lot of things. And it was because there was no spinal fluid flowing to the brain. And
Yes.
on top of that, I had instability in my neck. I was having this C7 bone come out when I would try to lay down, and arteries were holding it in place. And that's not supposed to happen. And it
Wow.
could have broken artery at any point, and I could have had a stroke. They didn't
Mm.
know how I had lived to be that long with this condition. They didn't know how I had lived to be 35 years old and still be living when they found it. And I know that was the grace of God.
Amen.
Well, he proceeded to tell me that I had this condition. I said, no, 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 we're not going to have brain surgery. Nope, not having it. I know what I got now. And I went to a Benny Hinn conference. I was going to get my
Wow.
healing because I had
Well, I
seen,
love Benny.
I do too. And I had seen miraculous healings all my life. I grew up as a little girl and I sang with my mother and father, and I had seen miraculous healings. Well, I did not get healed, so that was
I've
not
seen.
God's plan.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that scripture in Proverbs 3:5. He says, "Trust in the
Yes.
Lord with all your heart, lean not into your
And
own
to your
understanding,
own understanding and
but
all
in
your
all
ways
His
acknowledge him.
ways acknowledge Him and
Acknowledge
He will
him.
direct your path." Well, He
Amen.
had another plan for me, so
For sure.
that yeah, so
I
that
know that's
February.
right.
I went to the doctor and he said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, let's start with this neck surgery thing, but no brain surgery.
Mm.
And so he had to go in through the front because it was too dangerous. They literally slit me across the throat, took out this
Ooh.
bone in the front,
Mm.
and had to, move your everything over and put in that bone from the front. And so they did that, and I survived that. I lived through that. 4 months later,
God.
still sitting up sleeping. And
Mm.
he says, we have to make a decision on this because you could die in your sleep because you have no spinal fluid almost going up into your brain and you can't live like this. You just cannot live like this. And he
Yes.
said, uh, my case was an emergency situation. Not everyone with this condition has to have brain surgery,
Mm.
but in the position I was, it was emergency. And there was only a 50% chance that it would alleviate some of the symptoms. And the surgery is not a cure, it's just something to prolong the progression.
Wow.
So I made the decision. I prayed and prayed, and I made the decision June the 29th of 2006. I had the surgery, which is 13 years ago. I know we share that anniversary, June the 29th.
Oh yeah.
I remember that. And
Yes.
I had that surgery 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a near death experience during the surgery. My blood pressure dropped. They didn't think I was going to make it. And I seen an angel, which I know now is an angel.
Mm.
And she had came to me, and her name was Inga. I thought it was a nurse that worked there. And she
Uh-huh.
told me that I was going to be okay. Well, when I woke up, I just thought I had been cared for a nurse. And I got
Mm.
to regular floor, got out of ICU, and I said, "Where's Inga? I want Inga to treat me." They said, "There's no one here by that name." And
Wow.
they said, "You was pretty out of it, so we don't know what you're talking about."
Mm.
So I made it through all that, and it was 2 years of recovering from this surgery. It was rough. I still couldn't take really
Mm.
good care of myself. My hair was long like it is now, and so they braided it to the sides, and I could barely comb my hair and brush my teeth and eat. I wasn't able to get out of my house, only to go to doctor's appointments within those 2 years, and it was very dangerous for me to ride in a car a whole lot because I still had instability in my neck.
Mm.
And
Sorry to hear that.
so it was a very depressing time, and I didn't know if I wanted to live like that. And I
Yes.
just kept praying, God, please, help me. And during those 2 years, I wrote lots of poetry. And during 2011, I had another surgery where they reconstructed my whole neck. And they put cables and screws. My grandson calls me a transformer, and all to put me all
That's the young
together,
people for you. Yes.
to put me hold my neck all together. And so about a year and a half ago, um, I do event coordinating, and I really felt God calling me to start telling my story, but I did not know how I was going to tell my story, and I
Yes.
didn't know what the show was going to be
Yes.
called. And I was scared to come out and start telling my story because I wanted everybody to see me as being strong because I was always the person who handled everything and just went
Yes.
on and just didn't complain and just went on with my life. Well,
Yes.
it got to the point where I felt I really could not travel as much with my event coordinating like I did before,
Mm.
and I was getting really tired out. And so a friend, she started encouraging me. She said, "Why don't you start a podcast and just begin with that?" So I
Yes.
prayed about it and I prayed about it, and I woke up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I remembered 14 years ago when I had resigned from my job. I was packing away stuff at my desk, and I remember praying, Lord, if you can reveal what's wrong with me, someday I want to get out there and tell others what you have brought me through and what I was healed from. And I
Yes.
remembered what I had prayed that day. And
Uh-huh.
I said, well, Lord, I went through all these years. I call those my silent years because I didn't tell nobody what was going on, just immediate family. And so finally, at that moment when I woke up, I have this little book I write in, and when I write a lot of poetry, and I write
Sure.
little things down. And I kept hearing in my head that night the voice of hope, the voice of hope. And I said, what is the voice of hope? I don't understand what the voice of hope is. When I got
Yeah.
up, I wrote down in my journal the voice of hope. And when I did, a poem came together called The
Wow.
Voice of Hope. And
Mm.
that's where I came up with the name. And I started to, the next day, which was June the 29th, the night before I was going to start the podcast, I called my friend. I said, I think I'm going to do it. And I told her what I was going to call it. So I did my very first live in a closed group of 5,000 women that suffer with this condition.
Wow.
And then I started the podcast that night, and it just kind of grew from there. And I didn't tell my full story then, I just told bits and pieces. And then August of last year, I appeared on another show and I told my full story. And that's where everybody started reaching out to me. People
Beautiful.
that was around me, they did not know how I kept the secret because, as you see, I look fine by the outward appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the Voice of Hope show on Facebook started after that. And I've been doing that for over a year. And I interview other people with my condition and other conditions, like yourself. I've had you on the
Yes.
show.
Oh,
And
yes.
I cover, like, next month is going to be the whole month of addiction, just
Mhm.
all different topics people may be dealing with.
I
And
know that.
then that's where the Voice of Hope was birthed. And then just a couple weeks ago, I started on a radio station with Beverly Nations. I got that
Hmm.
opportunity, and
That's
that's every other Thursday night, either 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. And I just started to share my journey. And the more I did, I realized that through Second Corinthians 12:9, that scripture, through his grace is sufficient, that through our weakness we are made strong. And I did
yeah.
not understand that scripture And I really started to get it the more I shared my story because
Yes.
it showed me that I had nowhere else to go, nowhere else to turn but to God.
Yes.
Because even though I've had these surgeries, I still have difficult days. And some days I struggle with a
Sure.
lot of pain.
Sure.
But I'm still here. And
Yes, you are.
14 years later, I've defied the odds all my life. And I'm so excited to say next week I will have my 50th birthday. They've told me
Woo!
congratulations.
Happy birthday to you. And happy birthday with a million blessings. Wow,
Thank
that's
you.
great. Oh, that
Thank
is so great. Well, did you tell them where they could see and when they could see the Voice of Hope, or what's the page, or the website? I want you to say that and the podcast thing before we go any further.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the you can go onto Facebook, and all you have to do is type in the Voice of Hope, and the page will come up. You'll see some flowers there. It says the Voice of Hope with Andrea Kuczynski, and under the bottom of it, it says Hope is Passion for What is Possible. And
Mm,
the Facebook page. And I have a show there once a week. This week I took a couple weeks off because last month I did almost 10 interviews because it was the awareness month for Chiari malformation. And then
mhm.
plus I'm in the radio show now, so I took a little break these few weeks. And then that's
Yes.
where you can find the Voice of Hope show. And
Yes.
then the Voice of Hope podcast, I also post that on the Voice of Hope show. And then you
Mhm.
can also go under my personal page, Andrea Kuczynski, and I also post the shows on there after it's aired and the podcast on there also. And then the radio show is Beverly Nations, and that is reached at. I usually post that whenever my show is going to go live, and
Great.
you would just call in, and that would be 605-562-0444, and then you would put in a code which is 741-4519 and then 1 to listen. And then you would hear me live on the radio, and then 2 to join if you wanted to join in on the conversation and ask questions. And I usually, if your friend requests me or anything like that, you would see whenever the show is going to be live, and it's every other Thursday night. So that's
Excellent.
where you can find me. So,
Wow. Wow. I tell you, with all you're getting, get an understanding. What I love about you is that with all that you went through, what I mean, you did take the time to uh you know go to God with it. You know what I mean? Seek Him, because I seeked Him too when I was sick. Because He promised me I wouldn't be on dialysis, and I said, God, what happened? And He said, I want you to witness a miracle. And who knew the 5 books? Who knew the Lisa Baxter show that went on cable, and this urban network as well, and others, that it would be so long, and even showing the ones I've done in the past, the future, and you just don't know how God is going to do it, because sometimes you do wonder why I wanted what you healed so many people, and I guess He healed us in a different way where we didn't die, and He keeps us, and then we're able to tell our story at the same time. You know what I mean? I mean, your life can speak even if He took you home, but it's speaking volumes right now. I ain't mad at you. He really speaking volumes right now. You know, how old is your show, The Voice of Hope?
I've had the show a year and a half now. So, yeah, I've been doing that a year and a half.
And how have you seen how have you seen it change or help anybody else's life?
Wow, it's been remarkable. It's been like eye-opening to me,
Mm,
just by when I first started it. Uh, at first, I was just kind of like shocked at the outreach people started pouring out and contacted me uh,
yeah,
that had this condition. And once I started sharing interviews about this condition, and then this past September, I had a doctor, one of the 10 specialists in the world on that talked about the condition. And
yes,
I'm going to have more doctors on this fall.
that's
Uh,
great.
and so that they can, because we're the own expert of our body, and we know what our body feels. And
Yes.
the doctors, they're trying their hardest and the best with their knowledge that they have to help us, but we
Yes.
have to learn to keep journals of medical journals of things that's going on with us, keep all our blood records when we have blood tests, all of
That's
our
right.
scans when we have scans. And I urge people to do that because if I had not done that, then I don't know if I'd been diagnosed because by the time I went in, I had a stack of files that was like this
Wow.
because it was years and years of testing because I'd been to every specialist, literally, that there is
Yes.
pretty much. And so
Wow.
it helped me to teach others that are newly diagnosed with whatever they may have to be their own advocate. Because, I with never knowing exactly what I had, I was on a medical quest to figure this out, and I was
Yes.
determined. And so it taught me a lot, even though I was not healed miraculously. All the
Hmm.
skills I got from learning how to be my own advocate helped me to teach others how to do that too. And which you probably understand that with going through it yourself, you was able to teach others how to be their own advocates and keep
Oh yeah.
digging,
That's
digging.
important. That's
Mhm.
important. What are the symptoms of this illness? I'm trying to say it right. Was it
Yeah,
cherry,
key
cherry malformation?
it's called key, like a door key, key
Uh huh. Yeah.
malformation.
Uh huh.
And there's what the symptoms are. There's four different kinds, and Chiari
Mm,
malformation one is the most common.
yes.
And what you usually experience, it ranges from individuals. Every individual may never, some individuals may never have to have surgery. And what happens is you can start to have paralysis. It mimics a lot of stuff like multiple sclerosis,
Wow.
Parkinson's disease,
Oh.
because I had to have spinal taps
Mm,
because they went to rule out Lou Gehrig's disease, MS, Parkinson's, because the left side of my body would go numb, and then the left side of my eye, the vision would go in and out.
yeah.
And there was a period of time for like a week I was paralyzed. I couldn't use my legs very well, and
Mm,
I got that back, and praise God. And then there was a
okay.
time where I was not able to use my arms at all, very much, very limited. And that was because of all the pressure being put on my spinal cord right
Whew.
here in the base of the neck. And so that would be some symptoms, paralysis. I urge people when they have these conditions, just don't assume that you have one certain thing
All right.
because I was told I had everything under the sun. And then they tested me for Lyme disease. They tested me for MS, the Lou Gehrig's, Parkinson's, everything you could think of. They
Oh,
even sent me to a cancer doctor and did a bone marrow test because they thought I had blood
whew.
cancer possibly. Uh, I had been to an infectious disease doctor because they thought I had maybe something that was parasitically infecting my whole body.
Wow.
And so I just started to take all of these images and start to constantly document things. And then I would go periods of time where it would get to where I could not eat nothing but crackers and some baby food and drink water.
Wow.
And anytime I would try to eat anything else, I would get sick and just my body wouldn't, it would reject it. And the doctors give me up and they said they don't know what to do. We don't know how long you'll live. You're just going to have to live like
Ah,
this, is what they told me. And so I defied the odds. I went back to
yes,
the
you
doctor
did.
that told me that after I gained about 35 pounds back. And I said, listen, I'm still living. And please do not ever give people, make them feel hopeless because you do not know, if you don't know what's going on,
Yes.
try to send them somewhere else where they can get help if you're not aware of what possibly might be going on. But don't give
Referral.
them, uh, make them feel like there's no hope. Because if I had to listen to that doctor, I might have went home and crawled up in bed and just said, "Okay, this is it. I'm coming to meet you, Jesus." But I
Mm.
decided that I had to do something about it and keep digging and digging and digging till
Yes.
I
Yes.
figured out what was going on.
Wow.
And don't never give up on yourself. I wanted to so many days. I would be in so much pain. And then I would go back to work after I would get better. And then it got to the point that it got so bad, I had nowhere else to turn but to
Mm.
try to find somebody who would listen to me. And that's when I prayed that prayer that if God would send me to a doctor where I could figure out what was wrong, I would
I know
spread
that's
hope
right.
to somebody one day. And I met that doctor 5 months after that prayer. So prayer is
Wow.
powerful. Prayer is very powerful.
Oh, prayer changes things. Yes. Five is the number of grace. So you had 5 months and you found that doctor. What type of work did you do?
I originally started in customer service. I did that for a number of years. And
Mm.
I loved my job that I was working at when I resigned. My passion was music. It was always music. I grew up in a family where I sang with my family most of my life. And I actually
Uh-huh.
was in college for music. I wanted to teach music. And I had moved from Tennessee. I'm originally from Tennessee to Florida, where I live now. And
Uh-huh.
I kind of had just pushed away singing because it got to where it was hard to hit high notes. And I
Yes.
didn't know at the time it was because of my condition and it was putting pressure on my
Mm.
vocal cords and stuff.
Wow.
And so I became very frustrated, but I realized through the 14 years and going through
Yes.
all these surgeries, I really never went away from my music because I wrote a couple songs. I haven't sang them publicly. I
Hmm.
wrote I've always wrote poetry. And
Wow. We
through
have
all
that
of
in
my
common.
surgeries. Yeah,
Yes.
you wrote poetry
Songs
too?
and poetry I write. Yes. Plays, books, music.
Oh,
Yeah. I ain't
that's
mad at you.
right. That's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
And it's
Wow.
so amazing how God was still using that. It would be in my head on the days where I'd sit in my chair for hours and hours. I would hear a tune and I would just start to write it as good as I could because my handwriting wasn't real good at the time. And
Oh, wow.
that's when I wrote one of my first songs. It's called God Lights Up My Life. And I'm going to
Mhm.
sing that publicly someday. And
Uh, well, if you
I,
feel like singing, I won't stop you. I love songs and singing. Whether it's a written song or something you have on your heart, a little tune. Hey, I welcome it all. We can use a little something, something, you know. Well, because
well,
I met you. Because I
I,
met you on Angie's show when I watched it. I watched it one night and saw your testimony and your stuff and fell in love with both of you and had to have both of you guys on the show and been on you guys' show. Well, we had to cancel this month with Angie's show though. But what did I hear singing? You said you was ready? What? Oh.
all right, I've never did this. I'll do it for you. I'm just going to do a little bit. I don't have
All
no
right.
music. I don't have no, you got the first time this has ever been public.
Ooh, yay, we making history.
I have not sung publicly in 20 years, but I had a dear friend that passed away a couple months ago, one of my entertainment friends,
Sorry.
and he was working with me on my voice.
Oh.
And so I'll try just a little bit of it. It's just the first verse and the chorus. And God gave me this song one night. I was sitting and I was watching TV, and there was this commercial come on. You remember that old song, "You Light Up My Life"?
Yes.
And I was like, no, wait a minute. A man doesn't light up my life. God lights up my life. He's the
Come
one.
on
I
now.
mean, it's great to have a spouse or, a mate.
Oh,
But I was
sure,
like, but
sure.
if it
I
wasn't
had one.
for, and I mean, it's great. But if God is not in it first, then I know God was what was keeping me here. If it wasn't for Him
Amen.
keeping me, I wouldn't be alive. And so that's where this
Soothe,
song came from. God lights up my life. And so
soothe, I ain't mad at you.
I started writing it down really fast, and
Uh-huh.
I've okay, I'm a little nervous here. I'll try just a little bit now. I don't know how this is going to go, but
Give us whatever you got. We'll take it. No pressure.
all right. So many need now. I see it all along, praying for answers, waiting for a miracle. Then he came along,
Yes.
and God lights up my life.
Yes.
He gives me hope
Yes.
to carry on. Fill your days with faith. It won't be long when all hope is gone. He'll light up your life. That's about all.
Hallelujah. All right now. You better go ahead. Don't you start nothing in that corner. Don't make me come to Florida. All right now. Come on. I know that's the truth. He light up your life. That's right. He lights up our lives. That's so true. I ain't mad at you. Bring it on here. Bring it in. You know, I'm telling you. Listen, if you had to say something to somebody that was dealing with this illness or just found out they had the same illness, what exactly would you say?
To not give up, even though they feel like they've been diagnosed and there's no cure for it, that there is nothing impossible. Nothing impossible with God. Nothing. Because I was given up so many times. When I first heard I had this thing called Chiari malformation, I'm like, what's that? And I was terrified. I literally jumped off the table and wanted to run. But don't
Right.
run, you know, empower yourself with knowledge. You know, start researching, doing all that you can to find out about the condition. Find out where the specialists are that treats this condition, and then go from there. But there
Wow.
is hope, and not everybody's case is as extreme as me. Like when you heard me sing, my throat would cut out. Like I used to, sometimes if I talk long periods of time, my throat would cut out. And then some days it
Yeah.
doesn't do that. And I was in customer service, and that was one of the warning signs was like, I got to where I would talk all day long for 10, 12 hours on my job, and it would just be like my throat would cut out. And it would scare me. But it was because of everything that was being affected from my brain having so much pressure on it. And but I slowly I've had to work to learn to take deep breaths whenever stuff like that's happening. And I find sometimes you have to find a new normal, and that's not a bad thing. That's not always a bad thing. Sometimes finding a new normal helps you get out there, and it puts you into a whole new world
Mm.
that to help other people who are fighting this condition and other conditions, and can help give you hope on days that you're having bad days. Because for me, just to be able to sing one note is just like a miracle for me, because I couldn't do that for a long, long time. And, just to never ever give up, no matter what your dreams are. If you think you got a condition, you think, oh, that's it, I'm not going to be able to do that. My life was not given to me like I wanted it to be, but you got to keep trying to do it a different way. You can't let that diagnosis define you. Keep going out and enjoy your life the best that you can. And
Yes.
yeah, you may have challenges, but find a way around those challenges to do the things that you want to do, but don't take whatever diagnosis you get as a death sentence because it's not. I'm living proof at over 25 years later. And let me say that once again. I'll be 50 next week. They told me I wouldn't be able to be to this age, to that age. We don't know what to do with you. And that was over 20 something years ago.
Wow.
And I defied the odds. So
Yes.
don't sit there when you get a diagnosis and think my life is over because I was scared. I was terrified. And I felt like I was robbed from everything that I love to do. You know, get out and plan events and uh, sing like I used to. But I have to find a new normal. I had to find a new way to do things, and I'm still working on it, and still practice on it. I'm not giving up, and I want to help motivate others that there is life no matter what you're going through in your journey. Just don't give up.
Wow. Wow. Whoa. That is wonderful. Ah, that's beautifully said too, you know. Is there anybody that you want to give a shout out or anything to?
Well, I want to give a shout out to my family for always being there, especially my son, my grandson. My kids were there when I was going through a lot of these things, and they helped me a lot. And
Wonderful.
just to the wonderful friends, I can't mention them all, that's inspired me along the way. And if it wasn't for so many people coming in my life and pushing me to start to share this dream I had of spreading hope, uh, I don't know if I ever would have did that. So I believe everyone comes into our life for a reason.
Yes.
And uh, they sometimes people don't always stay in our life. Sometimes we learn lessons from them. Like my friend
Sure.
that passed away, I was very sad, but I learned a lot of lessons from him,
Yes.
and and blessed me in such big ways. And I have so many friends that's come in my life in just the past 5 years, and I know that was divine connections. And I believe you're one of those divine connections. You
Oh
really
yes.
blessed
Oh
because when
yeah.
I'd love, hearing your little messages when you send me on text message. I may be having a bad day, and you always inspire me. And you just don't know, what that does for people. You don't know what they're going through in their day.
Well, you do
And
the same for me. Thank you. You do
you're
the
welcome.
same for me. I mean, you had me on your show because you knew some people on dialysis. Sometimes
Yeah.
when a person have their show, sometimes the show is one vein, one way. I like different illnesses besides my own, plus resources. And you had me on the show. You're a woman of faith. You're a strong woman, a family woman, and you send me great inspiration messages on my phone, and you post them as well. So I definitely appreciate you, and we're gonna have a long time relationship anyway. I thank you definitely for being on the show. Is there anything that we missed, or anything you want to say before I actually end the show?
I think that's it, except thank you for having me and inviting me on. It was a joy. Uh, Love seeing you again. I love seeing all your lives. You always pep me up. Keep doing those lives. You pep me up some days.
Thank you. Oh Lord. Well, I'm glad to hear it. You know what I mean? It means something to you, not just to be alive, but if you can do something for somebody else or change somebody else's life or make a difference somewhere, it's all worth the living because it's not all just about you. I'm glad to be happy and living, but it's good to help somebody else to be happy and living too. So you do those things, and I definitely appreciate you, and you
Thank,
have a sweet night. And thank you. And we will be talking. I
thank you.
appreciate
You too. You too.
you. All
I
right.
appreciate you being on the show. Much love to you.
Thank you. Many
Oh,
blessings.
you too. God bless.
Guys, you heard my guess. And I mean, if she didn't have a testimony, a beautiful voice, and a gift of writing, a pod show, and I mean, a radio show, and everything, I mean, you can have these things too. We're not the only ones out there if you have a dream to do this, but also learn from this. If you're ill, if you're sick, if you're dealing with something, I mean, whatever it is, we are here for you. We hope every show helps you in some sort of way. Please share it. Please learn. Please do. Much love, many blessings, and I'll just bid you a very good night. See you next week. Your girl Lisa Baxter with the one.